Welcome back to the channel, guys. So I might have made myself into a liar. The last episode I mentioned that the next car I was gonna buy was gonna be something Japanese. Now there are two reasons why you're looking at a VW right now. One being is the car that I was going to purchase, the deal fell through. And that was a first gen Miata, an NA Miata. And it was a 60,000 mile car that sat under a tree for the last decade that I wanted to bring back to life. Unfortunately, the owner of it decided to hold it for some guy for a couple of weeks without a down payment and refused to take a down payment from me so I could buy that car. So I gave this car a lot of grief back in 2012 when the Mark 6 Golf R came out. I actually commonly referred to it as a GTI-R because the drivetrain in it on the front side was essentially a GTI with all-wheel drive. And I came from the world of VR6s, and that's what an R32 was, what an R was a car that had a big old 3.2 liter VR6 with all-wheel drive and a manual transmission. Now I've owned this car for a couple of weeks now, and I've been driving it around. It has been doing daily duties. I wanted for a while to retire the truck from doing daily driving duties solely because how much it costs me in fuel, and I end up being one of those guys that's daily driving a truck instead of using it for its intended purposes of towing. Now granted, I do use it for towing and it's not going anywhere. It's one of the best vehicles I've ever owned. However, as a daily driver, it is comfortable, it is great, but it's just kind of annoying. It's difficult to park in places and things like that. So that's where this Golf R comes in. Now this is a high mileage car. It is not a brand new car by any means. This is a 2013 Golf R. And instead of buying a GTI or a regular Golf or a diesel one, I went with the Golf R. And simply because I can't have a boring daily driver. Not to say that the GTI is boring, but something about the Golf R in the 6th generation always drew me to it. Maybe it's the whole front end and the redesign. It's on the same chassis as the Mark 5, but they reworked it, and I think they made it look much better in the Mark 6 generation than the Mark 5. I was never a fan of the Mark 5. I thought it looked too bubbly. They made some straighter lines and made it look much, much better. Now everyone's been used to my channel having a whole bunch of Mercedes on it, and all of a sudden, out comes a VW. Now I have a long history of VWs. If you watched my video I posted months and months ago about my whole car history, I've owned a lot of VWs. However, I've never taken down the road of the 2.0T and a more modern day Volkswagen. I have some grief with VW. Nowadays, the cars that they build compete with Toyotas, and not to say that's a bad thing that you want to compete with Toyota, but VW always offered a premium car for slightly more money than the average car. Now they just offer a Toyota equivalent for around the same price as a Toyota, and that special thing that VW had going for so many years, I feel like has died off. With this car, I don't think it has. I think it has all the right ingredients for being a great car. Like I mentioned, I've been driving it around for the last couple of weeks, and honestly, it has brought out the younger Jake in me. I find myself taking on ramps and off ramps at wide open throttle and just driving kind of like a goon. As the title would suggest, this is a higher mileage car, and most of the low mileage ones in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. Now, as you can see, it is a very, very clean car. This car comes with 11 pages of Carfax history of it being serviced at a VW dealer its whole life. Since it has been a car, an enthusiast has taken care of it, left it stock because there's not a single mod on this car, and just drove it and took care of it as it should. So the whole mileage thing, with it sitting right now at 148,000 miles, I'm really not concerned about it. It has been solid for the last couple of weeks. I've had no complaints about it, And honestly, it is a really fun car to drive. So what are my plans with it? Well, there are a few things that come with an older car. Although this is a 2013 model year and it's a 9-year-old car. So one thing I'll definitely have to do is change out the headlight lenses because they do have some weathering on them. I attempted to try to buff them, but not much came of that. So the headlight lenses is definitely something I'm going to change. I'm not gonna make it into a Hot Boy car. I have entertained the idea of probably maybe putting like a tune on it or something, but I don't want to be that guy driving around in my Golf with a Stage 2 Plus saying I'm pulling on Lamborghinis. Other than that, I gotta do a little bit of maintenance. I gotta make sure that the timing belt's been done. Although the Carfax, which says it has had 100,000 mile service on it, which would normally include a timing belt, but I don't know for a fact. So that is something I'm gonna have to pop off the cover on, see the condition of the timing belt before I go throwing horsepower at it. This is a really clean and well kept example. You would not think this car has done nearly 150,000 miles. There are plenty of them out there, and I by far did not buy the cheapest Golf R on the market, but definitely the cheapest, cleanest one that you could possibly find. So first things first, as I mentioned, the headlights are not in the greatest of shape. Now camera is doing them way too much justice, but on this angle you could see that they are oxidized. Other than that, it's in great shape all around. There's no damage. The wheels are in good shape. The brakes are in good shape. And there's no door dings, dents, scratches, or anything of the sort. The taillights, as I've mentioned, I don't like necessarily the Golf taillights, so that is something that's gonna have to change. And obviously what differentiates the rear end of a Golf R from a regular GTI or Golf is the dual exit center exhaust. Now when the Mark V came out, I was about that, but it has grown on me, and now seeing it next to a regular Golf or a GTI, it makes more sense. It gives it that little bit of oomph without going over the top. On the inside, like I said, it is very clean, very well taken care of. None of the buttons are peeling. Everything works as it should. And before somebody goes into the comments talking about how I feel about the whole Dieselgate thing, this car comes from around that generation of Dieselgate. Two things. One, you'll never make a diesel run clean, and most manufacturers have been fibbing diesel cars and to try to make them seem clean diesel. Two, who gives a damn? Sit down, have a gluten-free taco, and hug a tree, and move on with your life. So, if you're unfamiliar with the history of the R32 / Golf R or the hot all-wheel drive Golf in the US, let me break it down for you. So I personally had the Mark IV R32. That was one of the greatest cars I've ever owned, and the one I regret the most selling it. I've mentioned before in other videos I wanted to buy one, but they're so elevated in price right now, and even a horrible condition one is far too expensive for my budget. So I kind of settled on this thing for two reasons. One, it's still an R, it still has all-wheel drive, and two, it has much better fuel economy. Now granted, nobody really buys a car of this type to be an economy car, but when you come from a line of V8s and big heavy four-wheel drive vehicles, this thing with 25, 6-ish miles per gallon does pretty well. Now continuing with the R theme, this car in the US was only sold with a 6-speed manual. There was no DSG option whatsoever. This is the only spec you could get it. The only options from my knowledge were things like navigation and sunroof, which are the two things this car doesn't have, and I really don't care. Navi gets outdated real quick, and the screens and everything else look old real quick in cars, so this has kept its age much better. Sunroofs I don't really care much about. I mean, they're kind of nice to have. At the same time, they add extra weight to overhead of the car. Now granted, I'm not necessarily going to use this car as any type of race car, but I have entertained the idea of using it for autocross next year. This car will probably be much more suited at an event like autocross than my C63. I'll still debate on that. Right now it's just going to do daily driver duties. Continuing with the story of the R32/Golf R in the US, after the Mark IV went on sale in 2004, dealers were actually afraid that they won't even be able to sell them. And it was because of a petition auto enthusiasts signed to get the Mark IV R32 to come over to the US. They actually sold it in the first place. Then when the Mark V came out, they only released it as a DSG model, mostly because Americans can't drive stick shift. When the Mark V hit the market, being DSG only, there was an uproar for all the enthusiasts that nobody wants the DSG one. So then again, when the Mark VI came out, VW went back and sold it as a manual option only, and I think that was the right choice. This car is not fast enough where it needs a DCT, and rowing through gears makes it that much more fun and engaging to live with every day. Then the Mark VII came with both options. You could get them in a manual and an automatic, and then same with the Mark VIII, the current generation. One thing that makes this thing a proper R, and it's hard to explain. If you've never owned a VW, you just won't get it. That's the best way I could put it. It's kind of like when they have those stickers on the Jeeps that say it's a Jeep thing. You won't understand. There is something special that VW has always done with their cars that make you want to drive them. I find myself driving this car for no apparent reason. Last weekend, Lauren and I went to a haunted house, and we decided to take this thing instead of her car, and she was flabbergasted by the fact that I was driving like a complete yabo. For whatever reason, this car has brought in the youth back in me and makes me want to rip around and have fun. It does have a few advantages. From a GTI to an R, it looks a lot more subtle, and you have to kind of know what it really is, so you could fly under the radar. This color also helps with staying under the radar, which is great, and the car is pretty quiet. On the inside, it sounds pretty good. Supposedly, it has some vibrator thing on the windshield that increases, I guess, NVH type noise to make it sound a little bit better. A lot of people pull fuses, and I think on this one that has been done, because all I could hear is the engine. But nowadays, that's commonplace with new cars. Everybody's piping in fake exhaust noises because cars just don't do it like they used to. It's plenty of power to get yourself in trouble. You know, although I wouldn't mind a tune to wake it up a little bit more. Now, for a 9-year-old car, it's pretty well equipped. Heated seats, Bluetooth, touchscreen, all the bells and whistles you'd need for a car. And it comes from a generation of car before you needed government clearance to be able to turn off traction control. You could very easily disable traction control in this car and have fun. It's just a matter of hitting the button and it's off. No special tasks or anything else. That's all it is. So it's old enough to be a proper hot hatch, but new enough to be able to live with every day. Going forward, I'm not sure how I want to continue with this car. The more I drive it, the more I like it, the more I want to do with it. It does bring me back to the days I enjoyed the VW, and I am kind of eating my own words giving this car a hard time when it first came out and not being a proper R. It is a good car, it is solid, it is a lot of fun to drive, it's pretty engaging, it makes pretty good noises, and it's been a while since I've had a turbo car, or a VW for that matter. This is the first VW I've purchased in over 10 years. So that has to say something, right? So as you could probably tell, I'm pretty excited about this car. I don't know really why yet, but it's something that brings me back to the younger years. So like mentioned, I'm gonna do some upgrades on it and a little bit of breakup of content from the regular Mercedes stuff. I'll figure out what else I want to do with it besides just having it a nice daily driver. Hopefully it stays reliable. This is a high mileage car, but a really well taken care of one. So all the upgrades will probably be in the next video, so stay tuned for that. Once again, as always, thank you for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe, and any suggestions you may have, please let me know. I'm always open to suggestions. Thanks for watching, guys.